He accidentally captured an Apache girl with his trap. She feared he'd harm her. But instead The wind moved slowly across the dry land, stirring the dust in faint spirals. Morning light crept over the horizon, pale and cautious, as if afraid to disturb the silence that had settled like a weight across the valley. Nothing moved except the long grass bending in the wind and the brittle branches of a leafless tree near the edge of a gulch. The land was still, the kind of stillness that comes after too many hard years. Thomas Crow had been up since before dawn, as he always was. His boots crunched against frost-cracked dirt as he made his way through the brush, one hand gripping his coat against the cold, the other holding a rusted tin kettle sloshing with water. The fire back at the cabin was low, just enough to keep the pipes from freezing. He didn't care much for heat anymore, just enough to keep his hands working. He passed the creek bed slowly, eyes tracing the ground. His traps were scattered along the tree line, mostly to keep foxes out of the hens. He didn't need the meat. He didn't eat much these days. He just needed a reason to move. Then he heard it, a sharp cry, cut off too fast. Thomas froze. He turned toward the gully where he'd laid a snare the week before. The wind whispered again, brushing past his ears like a warning. He stepped forward slowly, heart quiet but firm, as if something old inside him had risen from a long sleep. And then he saw her. A girl, maybe 16, 17, caught in the wire snare at the ankle, her foot twisted awkwardly in the trap. Her skin was sun-dark, her long black hair tangled with dry grass. She was breathing hard, eyes wild, mouth clamped shut like a wound. Her body was tensed for flight, though she could barely move. Her dress, or what was left of it, was torn, worn, dust-covered. Apache. Thomas stared, unmoving. She stared back, not crying, not pleading, just watching, like an animal that knew better than to show fear. The air between them was thick, brittle. He could hear nothing but the wind, the rustle of dry grass, and his own breath. He dropped the kettle. It hit the dirt with a dull clank. She flinched, but he didn't move forward. Not yet. He looked down at the snare, then back at her face. Her lip was bleeding. One eye was bruised purple. Someone had hit her. More than once. He knelt, slow and quiet, hands out where she could see them. "It's all right," he said, voice cracked from years of silence. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl didn't speak, but her breath changed, just slightly, like the sound of wind moving through tighter grass. Thomas reached for the snare. The girl didn't move as he unhooked the wire. Her ankle was already swollen, skin broken beneath the cuff of the trap. She winced, but didn't cry out. Her eyes never left his face, not even once, not in fear, not in trust, just watching, measuring. Thomas worked quietly. His hands were steady, though something in his chest had begun to shake. He remembered another set of eyes, years ago, a different camp, a different war, a boy in a thatched hut, burned and bleeding, cradling a sister already gone. Thomas hadn't looked long that day, couldn't. Orders had been clear, no survivors. But the eyes had stayed. Now, decades later, those same eyes stared back at him, only now on a girl in torn fabric and blood-streaked legs, caught in a trap meant for beasts. He cursed under his breath, not at her, but at the world that made this scene so common. His knife came out, cutting away the wire slowly, cleanly. She still didn't speak. He didn't expect her to. When the trap was loose, he reached to lift her. She kicked weakly, teeth bared like a cornered fox. "I ain't taking you," he muttered, almost to himself. "Just getting you off the damn ground." She let him, not because she trusted him, but because she had no strength left to fight. Back at the cabin, the fire had warmed slightly, crackling soft, against the silence. Thomas laid her on the cot near the hearth, placing an old pillow under her bruised head. He poured water into a bowl and reached for a clean cloth. One of the few things he kept folded, untouched. She turned her face away as he dabbed at the blood on her ankle. Her body trembled, not from pain, but from holding too much in. Still, not a word, not a sound. Thomas sat back on his heels, staring at her. Then he looked down at his hands, scarred, thick, calloused. He'd built fences with these hands, dug graves, buried his wife and son, killed men in a war no one remembered anymore. Now he didn't know what these hands were meant to do. "She don't belong here," he muttered. "You got no food, no medicine, no answers." He stood, walked to the door. The wind outside had picked up, whistling through the cracks. Dust spiraled across the porch like ghost tracks. He could leave her, take her to the edge of the village, drop her off like forgotten luggage. No one would ask questions. No one would care. But then he heard it. Not a word, not a cry, just a sound, a breath. Behind him, the girl had shifted, just slightly, to face the fire. Her hands curled beneath her cheek, her body slowly relaxing, not from safety, not from peace, but from exhaustion. It was the way a wounded animal sleeps, knowing it might not wake, but too tired to keep running. Thomas watched her for a long moment. Then he stepped back inside and closed the door. The third morning, she finally spoke. It wasn't a sentence, not even a word at first. Just a single sound, a low, soft whisper that barely passed her lips. Thomas had been stirring beans over the fire when he heard it. He turned slowly, careful not to startle her. "Water," she said, barely audible. He brought it without a word, kneeling to help her sip. Her hands were trembling but stubborn. She didn't want help. He let her too. Bree let her spill it down her chin, let her keep whatever dignity she could still hold. She didn't thank him. He didn't expect it. Later that day, she sat up for the first time, watched the door, watched the hills. Thomas watched her watching. "You're waiting for someone," he said. She didn't answer, but her body flinched, just slightly, enough to confirm it. He didn't press her, but he checked the rifle that night, loaded every chamber, and placed it by the door. The next day she gave him her name. Lena. Apache, just like he'd guessed. 17, maybe 18. She had 3 brothers once, now she had none. "They sold me," she said simply, her voice like dry paper. "To men from the border. Said I was useless." Thomas stared at her. "Sold you?" She nodded. "For bullets. 2 boxes. He felt the ground shift under him. Men trading girls for bullets. And the world just moved on. "They came at night," she said, eyes fixed on the fire. "I ran. I heard them coming, so I kept running, hid in the brush." "Then your trap." She looked down at her ankle. It was healing, but slowly. Too slowly. "They'll come?" he asked. Lena didn't answer. She didn't have to. That night, Thomas sat on the porch long after the fire died. He watched the hills, the shadows, the sky. His fingers rested on the rifle stock, light but ready. He'd seen too many things in his time. Soldiers in the night, boys with torches, women dragged from homes. The kind of men who'd buy a girl for bullets wouldn't just give up. By the 5th day, hoofprints appeared at the edge of the gulch. 2 horses, one heavy, one light. Thomas followed the trail with his eyes only. He didn't go down. That evening, Lena found his old revolver, rusted, worn, tucked in a drawer near the stove. She held it like she'd held one before. "You shoot?" he asked. She nodded. If I have to. Thomas didn't ask how she'd learned. He gave heart to the gun. The next morning, the air felt different, tighter, as if the sky itself was waiting. Thomas stepped outside and saw the dust rising, faint but steady, down the canyon road. 3 riders. Not fast, not loud, just coming, like they already knew where to go. He stepped back inside. Lena was sitting on the cot, tying the remains of her boots. "They found you," he said. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. Instead, she looked up at him and whispered, "Please, don't give me back." Thomas stared at her. His bones ached. His heart was tired. He hadn't chosen a side in a long time. But something in her voice, quiet, terrified, desperate, burned deeper than orders, law, or reason. He walked to the door, picked up the rifle, and checked the chamber again. Then, "We don't let them take you." They didn't speak much after that, but something shifted. In the early light, Thomas found her kneeling by the fire, trying to slice potatoes with a dull blade. She wasn't good at it, but her hands were steady, her posture determined. He didn't interrupt. He just brought her a sharper knife and set it on the stump beside her. She glanced at him. Not a smile, not yet, but something softened in her eyes. That evening they sat side by side on the porch, backs resting against the log wall, watching the sun fall into the earth like an ember swallowed by ash. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was shared. Thomas handed her the rifle. She looked at him, uncertain. "You'll need both hands strong," he said. So she raised it. Her form was off, shoulders too tight, elbow crooked. He reached behind her slowly, carefully, to guide her stance. She didn't flinch this time. They practiced in the field behind the cabin. He'd set up old bottles and cans on fence posts. Lena fired once, missed, fired again, clipped the edge. The third shot shattered the glass. She didn't cheer. She just exhaled as if proving something only to herself. Later, inside, Thomas boiled water and unwrapped a small cloth from the drawer. Inside were 3 items: a bent silver locket, a worn bullet casing, a bad, and a broken harmonica. He set them on the table. Lena said nothing, just watched. He picked up the locket, opened it gently. A woman's face stared back. Next to it, a boy with wild curls and soft eyes. "My wife and son," he said, voice low. "Fever took her. The boy didn't last long after." He paused. "I left for the war a year after that. Figured if life was going to take everything, I'd go where it was loud enough not to hear it." Lena reached into her dress pocket and pulled out something wrapped in string. A button. Just one. Plain, black, and small. "My brother's coat," she said. "The last thing I found before they took me." They didn't say more. They didn't have to. That night, the wind was gentle. Thomas laid another blanket on the cot and moved his own bedroll to the floor near the door, just in case. He kept the rifle close, always loaded. Before the fire dimmed, Lena rose quietly, stepped over, and sat beside him. She didn't speak. She just handed him the harmonica. He looked at it for a long time. It hadn't made music in years. "I never was any good," he said. "Try." So he did. The notes came out rough, broken, off tune, but they came. Lena closed her eyes. Her head leaned gently against the wood frame of the cabin. Not sleep. Not yet. But something close. For a few short moments, nothing existed outside the walls of that old wooden house. Not the men coming, not the bruises, not the traps, or the past. Just 2 people, scarred and silent, sharing what little they had left. And for the first time in a very long time, Thomas didn't feel alone. The sky turned grey the next morning, not from clouds but from dust. The riders were back, only this time they didn't bother hiding their approach. 3 men, hardened faces, saddles layered with rope, knives, rifles slung casually like tools. The led one wore a red bandana across his neck and a long scar down his queue. Heek. He rode slow, straight toward the cabin. Thomas stood on the porch, rifle in hand, Lena just behind the door, clutching the revolver he'd cleaned for her the night before. The riders stopped, 20 yards out. The scarred one spoke first. "Old man," he said, voice like gravel, "you're harboring something that don't belong to you." Thomas said nothing. "She ran from what she owed. We paid for her. 2 boxes of brass." "She's not yours," Thomas replied. The man grinned. "She was sold fair. Ain't our fault if her people thought she'd break too soon." Thomas's grip tightened on the rifle. "You got no law up here," the man continued. "No badge, no right." "I got a loaded gun," Thomas said, "and 2 lungs left to aim it." There was silence. Then the man dismounted, slow, casual, as if he had all the time in the world. His hand brushed the butt of his revolver, not drawing it, just resting there. A threat, made gentle. "You're gonna die for her, then?" he asked. "For a girl you don't even know?" Thomas didn't answer. He stepped forward off the porch, boots hitting earth with weight. From behind the door, Lena watched. Her hands shaking, breath caught in her throat. She'd seen these men before. They didn't bluff. The man took another step forward. "Last chance, old man. Give her back. You can keep your shack and your life." "She's already home," Thomas said, "and I've already lost everything else." The man's smile faded. Faster than sound, he drew. But Thomas was quicker. The rifle barked, once, loud and final. The scarred man collapsed in the dust, mouth open, gun still in hand. The other 2 flinched. One ran, turning his horse with panic in his eyes. The other hesitated, gun raised, breath fast. And then came the twist. A second shot rang out. Not from Thomas's rifle, but from inside the cabin. Lena. The man staggered, dropped his gun, and fell backward off his horse. Silence returned, heavy and stunned. Thomas stood frozen, then slowly turned toward the door. Lena stepped out, revolver still trembling in her grip, face pale but set. "I wasn't going to let them take you either," she whispered. He looked at her, really looked, and saw not a girl anymore but something else, something solid, like a tree that bends but never breaks. He didn't speak. He just reached out slowly and took the revolver from her trembling hands. The wind moved again. The dust began to settle, and the earth was quiet once more. The bodies lay where they'd fallen, dust collecting in the folds of their shirts, blood drying in the heat. The horses had scattered, one galloping toward the trees, the other standing still, reins dragging in the dirt. Thomas moved slowly. He bent down beside the scarred man's body, checked for a pulse he already knew wasn't there. His fingers rested a moment on the man's chest, then let go. Not out of mercy, out of habit. Old soldier's instinct. You check the fallen. Lena stood at the edge of the porch. The revolver hung loose in her hand, the metal cooling. Her eyes were fixed on the second man, the one she'd shot. He hadn't moved. He wouldn't. A gust of wind blew through the clearing, and the trees whispered, dry, soft, indifferent. Thomas turned toward her. He didn't ask if she was all right. He didn't need to. Some wounds weren't meant to be spoken of. He took the shovel from beside the barn and began to dig. No ceremony, no prayers, just earth, sweat, and silence. The soil was hard, but not frozen. It gave in, slow and stubborn. Lena watched for a long time before stepping forward. She dropped the revolver onto the porch and picked up a second shovel leaning by the wall. Without a word, she joined him. Side by side, they buried the two men. They did not mark the graves. By sunset, the field was empty again. The earth looked untouched, though it never really was. Inside, the fire crackled low. Lena sat near it, legs tucked beneath her, staring at the orange glow. Her face was blank, not numb, just quiet, like teat. His weight hadn't landed yet. Thomas poured water into the basin, washed the dirt from his hands. Blood still stained his sleeves. He didn't bother changing. He sat across from her, knees cracking as he lowered himself down. For a while, they just listened to the fire. Then she spoke, voice soft, raw. "I didn't think I'd survive." Thomas looked into the flames. "Me neither." Another silence. Then she whispered, "It felt like killing them brought them back. My brothers." "But it didn't." "No," Thomas said. "It never does." She nodded once. That was all. Outside, the sky was turning. The stars were beginning to show. Faint at first, but there. Constant. Lena stood, walked to the doorway, and looked out over the land. The wind lifted her hair just slightly. Her shoulders no longer curled inward. There was still pain, but the shape of it had changed. Behind her, Thomas remained seated. He watched her in the doorway, a silhouette against the dying day. He thought of his wife, of his son, of war, of nights spent hoping something, anything, would give him purpose again. And now, here she was. Not his to save, not his to fix, but still here. Still breathing. Still fighting. The wind carried the last of the dust away. No horses, no riders, no more men. Just two souls in a cabin that had once been silent, now filled with the echoes of something close to life again. Spring came slow that year. The snow melted from the hills in patches, leaving behind wet earth and small green shoots that pushed up through the silence. The wind softened, and the mornings no longer hurt the bones. Thomas planted again. Not much, just potatoes, beans, a few rows of onions. Lena helped, kneeling in the dirt with her sleeves rolled up, hands firm, careful. She didn't talk much, and neither did he. But their silence no longer carried the weight of strangers. It felt like something lived there now. Some nights she sat outside after sunset, watching the stars rise behind the trees. Other nights she'd help cook what little they had and hum under her breath. Never a full song, just fragments. Like something she remembered from childhood, something she was still trying to piece together. She never asked to leave, and he never asked her to stay. The graves by the gulch were left unmarked, but not forgotten. Every time Thomas passed them on his way to fetch water, he paused. Just a second, a glance, enough to remember. One afternoon, Lena found a piece of old canvas tucked in the barn rafters. She cut it carefully, stitched the edges, and painted two simple shapes, a crow, wings outstretched, and beneath it, a mountain with the sun rising behind it. She tacked it above the doorway of the cabin, without a word. He never asked what it meant, but he looked at it often. As the seasons turned, so did the rhythm of their days. He taught her how to tend the fence line. She taught him how to walk quieter through the woods. They both learned how to survive again, not just with food and shelter, but with something closer to grace. One morning, a letter arrived, carried by a rider from the county seat. Yellowed envelope, no return name, just a stamp and dust. Thomas didn't open it. He tucked it into the drawer beside the locket and bullet casing. Whatever it carried could wait. That evening, Lena placed a small stone beside the fire. Black, smooth, warm from her pocket. She didn't say where it came from, but she set it gently on the mantel, beside the harmonica. They both looked at it, then said nothing. The wind moved softly through the trees that night, and the stars hung low, like candles in a quiet room. Some wounds never fully closed, some names were never spoken again. But in that old cabin, beneath the canvas flag and the soft weight of silence, something had changed. Not a happy ending, not a perfect one, but a kind of peace, quiet, hard-earned, and real. And long after both their voices had faded from the world, the porch still stood, the wind still moved through the grass, and the fire, though small, still burned.